Guys, and welcome back. Part 10. It's already part 10. Today we're going to do a little bit more advanced stuff. We're going to do AI, or artificial intelligence, inside Unity. Next videos will be about optimization and polishing, meaning we're going to add a bit more particles, a bit more random stuff in the scene to make it a little bit more filled. And optimization will be about occlusion culling and how to optimize your scene/game. But today we're going to do AI. Fair warning, this involves a lot of scripting, so you know. The basics of AI are actually really simple. At least in Unity 5. It was a little bit more difficult in Unity 4. Nowadays in Unity 5 you have a thing called a nav mesh or navigation mesh. And navigation mesh agent, which you can use to actually have some form of AI. In Unity 4 they didn't have that. Well, they did have that, but you have to pay for it because it was only available in the Pro version. But now it's a little bit more convenient. So we're going to do that today. Making that is actually really simple. Right now I have my mesh here, my cave. For example, I can select it and I can just hit bake, and then you get the blue scene here. If it's blue, it means that the agent/enemy can walk on it. But we have a little bit of a problem right here because there's a giant gap here. Let me turn off continuous baking for a second and I'll show you. When we have the props here, when I turn it off, there's a giant hole there which the enemies can cross, so we have to fix that in some shape or form. Let me turn this one off. I'm gonna clear it. What I did though is I just made a mesh in Maya, a navigation mesh. I'll show it. It's this one. It's actually really basic. It's just my mesh without the walls, and I just bridge these gaps in between here so the enemy can actually walk through it, over it I should say, and that's it. So I'm just gonna scale this one down. Nope, 0.01. There it is. One of the conditions for a navigation mesh is that the mesh itself is static, so I'm going to turn it off. So hence is why I'd also turn this one off, otherwise it would start baking. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to hit static, yes children, and then navigation again. You can find it by the way on the window navigation. Then I just hit bake, and there it is. We should now also see a nice path here. There we go. So the enemy can actually get everywhere in our level, so I'm just going to check to see everything is blue. If it's blue, it means that he can cross it. Looks perfect. It also makes a new folder here. You can actually see it here, nav mesh. There we go. Okay. So next up, I'm going to turn off all my mesh renderers. I don't want to see them in game, as you can imagine. There we go. Let's turn on my props again. Props. There we go. Let's turn on continuous baking again. So see if actually, yep, nothing changed. Perfect. There you go. Okay. So what I did in 3ds Max, I made a simple character, extremely simple character. An enemy, this bad boy over here. Took me about 5 minutes, so don't look at the model. It's really not that interesting. I'm just gonna do some parts of it, like this one. I made some wings because I figured it would be cool, but I tried it and it looks not that cool. And this one as well. Okay, so I could probably delete the bone as well. That looks weird. Looks really weird. Actually, no, let's just undo it. There we go. Okay. I just want to use this one to spawn the particles. And that's it. I just wanted to spawn fire, so it looks a little bit more dangerous than a hooded character like this one, for example. So I'm going to go to my standard assets and my particle systems and my prefabs, and I'm going to use the fire complex. Just going to drag it in. First thing I'm doing, I'm going to delete this light or just change it so it's real time, otherwise it's going to bake again. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to drag it here to the place of my character, roughly a little bit higher maybe. There-ish. Okay. Let's open it up. Right now it just does this. Looks a bit weak, so let's change that. First of all, I'm going to delete my smoke lit. I don't want that one, and the sparks falling. This just looks stupid, so okay. So in my fire particle system, I'm going to go to shape here, and I'm going to change the shape to mesh. So it uses the mesh, and then I'm going to click on play 1. Then you can see the base of it where it spawns, so I'm going to change it to 0 and minus 90. This one to 0.7, there you go. It now spawns on the vertices, because it's set here to vertex, so I'm going to change it to triangle, so it spawns on the triangles themselves. A little bit more interesting. Emission, I'm going to do it like 200. No, let's go way up, let's do 400. And the maximum particles, let's go crazy, let's do 5000. So you get this nice blob of fire. Let's do it maybe even 500. There you go. Same goes for the flames. Right now it's just this weird ass thing, so I'm gonna turn on shape, mesh, again turn it so 0 minus 90, 0.7 if I'm not mistaken. Let's check. Yep, 0.7. Also change one to a triangle, and same here, let's up the emission rate, let's do 200, and as well 5000. So we can now get this. That looks really cool though. Let's do glow as well. So again, shape, turn on, mesh, particle, triangle, minus 90 and 0.7 emission rate, 200, 5000. So we can this. Let's turn on actual view. This looks good though. Cool. Smoke dark. It's same as usual. It gets a bit boring after a while, but that's life. Same here, emission is 200 and 5000. Spark rising. Bit boring, but hey. 0 minus 90.7. This one is actually based on a graph, so I'm gonna grab all the one at the bottom, just move them up, so there's always some spawning going on. There we go, and let's do 5000. Now it looks like this, and this in game. That looks pretty damn cool. Okay, let's use the light. Let's make it a little bit shorter range, like 5. There you go, and no shadow. We don't want that. Okay. Let's drag this onto my enemy, right there. Okay, and I might just want to turn off my actual enemy mesh though. Oh, let's move the bone. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Let's play the game. So you have this character chasing you. Yeah, that looks pretty good. That's pretty cool. Okay. Let's go to my fire complex because this has a script on it that deletes the particle system. So maybe there's 2 maybe? I don't know. Let's try it out. Well, maybe not. Yeah, no. 1. Let's not do that. Let's do 1. Let's keep like that. Okay. Alright, easy. So far, so good. Okay. Next up, we're gonna make a script that actually so the enemy chases it. Right now, we have a navigation mesh, but nothing, no agent. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select my enemy, and then I'm gonna go to components, navigation, and nav mesh agent. So it now becomes an object that can actually walk on our navigation mesh, so on the actual ground for this bad boy over here. But right now it doesn't have a target yet at all, which is a bit boring. So we can make a script here. Let's call this nav mesh AI. I'm just gonna open it, and I wanted to follow the system of the player's position. The position is a form of transform, so I'm gonna make a public transform. If I can click, there it is. public transform. Let's do this player target. And then in the update function, I'm gonna say get component navmesh AI, that one, and then dot destination. Oh, sorry, navmesh agent, I should say. Navmesh agent dot destination is player target dot position. There you go. Let's drag it on our enemy right there. See what happens. This one. Let's put it on there and see what happens. So the first thing I have to do though, right now, I think I did one script. I did. Let's put it here, navmesh, and then we have a open stuff for the player. So I'm going to drag my player right in there. I'm just going to hit play and see what happens. There it is. So it's now going towards our player. Slowly. Should be able to see it soon. There it is. So it actually follows around the shape of our level, as you can see. It's actually pretty good, pretty decent AI already. Okay. Right now, as you can see, it stops right on top of the player because the stopping distance is set to 0. Let's actually increase it to like something like 2, or let's do 3. So it stops 3 units in front of our player. Let's test it one more time. Just gonna go there. Let's see. There it is. As you can see, it's sorry. It's stopped before the actual player object. Okay. Pretty easy so far. This is pretty much the basics of AI in Unity. Of course, I wanted to be a little bit more complex than this because this looks a bit boring. So, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna grab my enemy and I'm gonna make it turn it into a prefab. Right there. This one is still empty though, so I'm gonna delete this one for a second, and I'm gonna make a spawn location of the enemy. So right now it just stands there. So what I kind of want to do though is when the enemy or when the player has its flashlight on, that the enemy go back to this location, and when the flashlight is off, that it starts chasing the player. So I'm gonna create a empty game object here. I'm gonna call this enemy base, for example. So the enemy will always go back to this position. So in my script I'm gonna make a second public transform because I want to go to the position of that object. Transform, and I'm gonna call this enemy base. Enemy base. So we can now drag this one. It should be available right now. I can click, there it is. You can actually drag this one in there. Let's see if it actually works. So I'm gonna go to my play script here, and outside my if statements here, outside my input get key option, I'm gonna ask for if the flashlight is on. So if it's off, I want it to chase the player, and when it's on, else if it's on, I want it to chase. I want to go back to the return base, to this position here. So in my navmesh AI here, I'm gonna make two functions. I'm gonna get rid of this one. I'm gonna make a public void so we can access this from a different script. Public void chase player, for example, and a public void return base, return to base, for example, like so. So in here I'm gonna say player target position, and the other one I'm gonna copy paste this one real quick. I'm gonna use my enemy base, like so. So in my script here, then I should call these functions, the chase player and the return base. So in here I'm gonna find my navmesh AI script, and then I'm gonna call it nav AI or something else that makes sense. Then I'm gonna go game up, find out my enemy. Get component navmesh AI, and then I'm gonna say nav AI dot chase player. So if it's not on, I want to chase the player. If it like is on, I want to go back to base. I'm going to copy this part here. Then it should return to base. See if it works. Right now it shouldn't do anything because we didn't tell it to do anything. Oh, it actually does. Oh, all the way around. Oh, that's actually perfect. So, light off, it will chase the player. As you can see, when I turn the light on, it should just ignore me and go back to base. It actually does that flawlessly. Okay, very basic AI system, nothing really fancy. This is just adding like a game element, otherwise it would be boring. Because we made a heads-up display for the energy, so it actually should do something. Otherwise, what's the point of having it? So hence we have a little game element like this one, where you should conserve your light, otherwise you'll die. So then the player needs a, well, if the player gets hit by it, we should lose health, right? Otherwise, what's the point? So let's do that first. So in my player, I'm gonna add a cube. Let's make it nice and big so we can't miss it. So the enemy can't miss it, most importantly. And then I'm just gonna, my player script is here. Get a little bit more towards the back. There it is. I'm gonna turn off mesh render and turn on trigger. Let's call this the player trigger. And I'm gonna drag it on my player. There you go. It's actually set up correctly, I think so. Yep, there it is. But the enemy also needs a trigger object. Right now it doesn't have anything. There's no object in there that can actually collide, well, except for the actual mesh, but it's turned off. Well, it doesn't have any collision in there, so we need to add something that will actually collide with our player. So in here I'm gonna add a cube. Let's do a capsule actually. Let's do a capsule. Let's turn up the height. We don't need this one actually, and let's make it a little bit bigger, a little bit higher, and a while a little bit down. So there we go. And this is our enemy trigger. Drag it on the enemy. There you go. Actually, we don't. Oh, yeah, capture collider. There it is. Okay. So in our enemy, we need to make a script, obviously. This one here. We could do it in two different ways. We can actually change the script to player script and put it on our trigger, but it takes a little bit of more work because we didn't have to change a lot of stuff. So I'm gonna just be lazy, to be honest, and I'm just gonna call it player hit, for example. I'm gonna put it on my trigger there. I'm just gonna be lazy. Sometimes that's allowed, right? So there you go. Okay, let's edit it. We don't need a start function, update function, so I'm gonna get rid of that one. Then I'm gonna make a void on trigger enter. That one. And then we want to call this function here damage taken. So we can actually do it very easy. So player script. Let's call player as game object dot find. You can actually use a different method here as well. You can actually set the player to player tag player, and then you can actually find the object with the tag. It's actually a bit more efficient. So I'll find game object with tag, that one. Just a little bit more efficient. And then you can say tag player. Then get the component as usual still. Player script. And player dot damage taken, that one. Okay. So when we enter these, when the triggers entered, we actually take damage. Let's see if it actually works. Nope, we cannot. Let's check it out in line 9. Oh, okay, component. You only have one. There you go. Let's test it. Let's go to our player, see if we actually lose health. we don't. Because probably if we're unlucky, the triggers actually don't never meet. There you go, see? The triggers there, they don't ever meet, so we need to either make one bigger. You can of course make this one a little bit bigger. Let's make that one bigger. Let's do this one too. So it's nice and big, so the player can actually miss it. Let's check it again, player. There we go. We actually lost health before this. Actually, that makes sense because right now everything that has a collision object can trigger our health. So we want to add a collider, so we can actually check to see if the object that hit us is the actual enemy. So in here we can ask if call.name equals enemy, then just lose health. Okay. So now the health is still 100. But we still lose health. We should lose health actually. But we don't for some reason. Oh, that actually makes sense. Because we didn't check for this one. We actually need to check for the enemy collider. It's enemy trigger, that one. Yep, we lost health. But it only happens once. Even though the enemy is standing right in front of us, we just lose 1 health. So we need to do it a little bit differently. We need to invoke a trigger again, or invoke a function. So down here I'm gonna make a function called let's do take damage. Nope, not pink. This one. I'm gonna copy this one right in there. And same as last time, we're gonna invoke repeating the function name, so take damage after 0 seconds, and then every second I want it to get hit. But also make sure that we cancel it, so void on trigger exit. We should cancel out the invoke, so cancel invoke. So now when we hit the enemy, we should lose constant health every second. And we do, as you can see here. We should see it in there as well. Perfect. Of course you can do it differently as well. You can actually change this function to support an integer. Let's say damage. And then we can do this one minus damage. Because then we can actually send with it a damage value. So in here we can actually say damage taken like 5. So the enemy does 5 damage. But then we should also change the underwater script. It actually says it for us. That's really helpful. So in our underwater script, let's do water 1. So the water only does 1 damage. Let's see, I think that's it. Let's try it. Yep. So the enemies do 5 damage and the water does 1. That's hopefully that will actually happen. Be cool. 5, 5, 5. See, it actually counts off. So there's a bit more threat, otherwise it will be pretty boring. Okay, we can also do something in here that we take damage. Right now I did it here, play a grunt. I think we should do it a little bit differently though. I think we should do it in damage taken. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna grab this part here and I'm gonna put it in player script. I'm gonna do it here. So every time we take damage it does it here, but make sure in here play a grunt. We don't see anything here though. Well, we should get an error anyway if it doesn't work. Let's see what it does. So when the enemy hits us, we take damage. Perfect. I have no idea why it was in the underwater script, but actually there. Yeah, okay. We can just delete this one there actually. Okay. These are the very basics of AI. But we got one big problem right now is that the enemy is always there. It always spawns, and it's a bit unfair because we spawn here and the enemy spawns there, so a little bit unfair. So we might want to change it a little bit so that it spawns after a certain condition is met. So for example, when we play this here or here, that we then spawn a enemy. That's a bit more interesting, and then we can also spawn multiple enemies, which is even more fun, I suppose. So I'm gonna grab my enemy here, and I'm gonna turn it into a prefab. So I'm gonna drag it right down there, so it's now prefab. I'm gonna delete this one. There you go. Then I want it to be, when the player is here, oh, I should, here and here, that there's an enemy that spawns. Actually, I'm gonna do one more thing though. I forgot something. That's a bit stupid. I actually have a sound for the demon as well, for the enemy. I've got a whisper. This one. It just sounds a little bit more ominous, I suppose. So I'm gonna drag it on my enemy. I'm just gonna turn on 3D sounds. I'm gonna the spatial blend all the way to the right. It's to increase maximum distance to something like 3, I suppose. Yeah, looks pretty good. And let's do the max distance of something like 100. So let's play it, see what happens. We should hear it in the distance. There it comes. Should see it soon. There it is. Let's grab these ones all the way down to 0. There you go. Now I can turn it into a prefab. So I'm going to delete this one for a second and drag it down there. There you go. So now it does everything. It has the scripts. But as you can see, these are now empty because they're prefab. They're not in the game, and these objects are in the game, so you can't use this one here. But it's fine because we can change that, of course. Okay. There we go. Let's put the nav mesh on the geometry. And now things get a little bit more complicated, so bear with me. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a trigger right there. I'm gonna make a cube. I'm gonna place it right here so no one can miss it. And let's do it like this. There you go. I don't want the player to be able to miss it, so make it nice and big. Let's turn out the mesh renderer and turn on its trigger, and I'm gonna call this enemy spawner. So when the player hits this object, I want it to spawn an enemy. So I'm gonna make a new script. Let's do enemy spawn. Let's drag it on the enemy spawner right there. There it is. Okay. So now things get a little bit more complicated because we're gonna do some new stuff in here. So we have an enemy base, and I kind of want to use this one as a spawn location, but I want to have more spawn locations, right? Otherwise it will be a little bit boring. So I'm gonna rename this to enemy. Let's do the base, and let's create multiple empties. One here, for example. Let's put this one something like there, a little bit lower. Let's call this spawn location, spawn lock. Let's duplicate this one to here, same as the other one almost, and maybe also do one down here. That would be cool. Right there. Let's spawn it right here in the corner. There we go. So I want to use these ones as a spawn location where the enemies can possibly spawn. Maybe let's do even one more, maybe? Let's do one more. Let's use this one, and spawn it here, because we can. Why not? Okay. So let's start off simple. In my script here, I'm gonna delete these two. I don't need them. So the first thing I'm doing is void on trigger enter. Okay. then I want to spawn my prefab, my enemy prefab right there. You can do it in a couple of ways. The first thing I'm going to do is going to grab the script here, and I'm going to add something here. I'm going to create a game object, a public game object called my enemy, and this should give us a slot for my prefab if it actually compiles. So I can drag now my enemy in there, so we can actually change this one as well to a different enemy if you want to. Okay, and down here in my enter I'm going to use a different thing, different function that you've never used probably. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a game object. Let's call it demon, because that sounds interesting. And then I'm going to use a function called instantiate. So then it asks for the object that you want to instantiate, which in this case is my enemy, and then it asks for a vector 3 position. For now I'm just going to use 0, 0, 0, just to test it. Then it asks for the quaternion rotation. I'm going to type quaternion.identity. Then I want to spawn this object as a game object, so as game object. There you go. So but now when we enter it, it should just spawn an object and that's it. Let's see if I actually, yeah, no errors. I'm just gonna run like hell. And it should spawn in the, you should see it pop up in the hierarchy. In this case, it didn't. Actually, it did. So we now have two enemies that they spawned. But they're right on top of each other. Don't know why, but let's see. Player script 60. Yeah, okay. We're gonna delete this one for now. Okay, so trigger enter. We spawn one enemy and that's it. Let's move my player. Let's get rid of these. Let's move my player a little bit closer, or just use the spawner. This one. I'll just move a little bit closer to the actual player, so we don't have to walk all the way up there each time, since I'm lazy. So let's see if it works. Let's enter it. Let's spawn one enemy. It spawns two of them actually. God knows why. I have no idea why it does that though, but okay. Beats me. I'll spawn a whole bunch of them. It's fine though, it's fine for now. Let's just keep like this. So we just spawn them now at 0, 0, 0, but I kind of want them to spawn at my spawn locations. These ones, for example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new array, which is a list. For those who know Lua, it's a table. So I'm going to make a public transform. Then I'm going to add these brackets, which means that I'm going to use it as an array. And then I'm going to use spawner. Nothing more. That's it. So now in my script, when I go to my enemy spawner, you should now see that we get a size, in which in this case I want to use 4. So I'm going to grab 4, and I can just drag these ones in. This one there, there, and one more. There we go. So we have these 4 locations, but how can you switch? Well, we need to create something that we can actually use this one here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change these ones to spawner. So I'm going to grab these ones. That's spawner.position .x and spawner.position .y and spawner.position .c. Okay. See if we don't get errors. We get a shit ton of errors actually. That's really awesome. That's really weird as well. That's actually really weird. Okay, let's just do a little bit different. Oh, I know. Okay. Let's do a little bit differently. So, I want to access one of these 4 randomly. So what I'm going to do here, the first thing I'm going to create a integer. with a random number that I want to use. So let's call this integer random. Then I'm going to use random.range. So you can indicate a range between 0 and whatever you want. So I'm going to do 0, and then I'm going to use spawner.length. So it just counts how many items are there in my spawner array for this one. And then I'm going to make a new transform. Let's call this my spawner is spawner, then these brackets random, so it just grabs one of them. Then we can actually see if it actually works. Print my spawner. Shouldn't get any errors. We don't. Perfect. Let's check it. This triggered the spawn location 1, spawn location 2. Perfect. Then we can say here in the spawner locations, this time we can do it, my spawner.position.x, and then my spawner.position.y, my spawner.position.z. Well, it should then spawn at the spawning location that we just assigned. Let's spawn them. There's one, and there's one. I still don't know why it does two, but I think it's very weird actually. I only have one script attached with it. Still have no idea, but it's something I'll figure out later on. That's fine. It's weird though. Or is it because of the player? I think it's because of that one. Because we have multiple triggers. So we have the player trigger, the original body here. That triggers the trigger and trigger as well. So I'm going to turn it off for a second, and then it should be solved. Then we should just spawn one. Yeah, there it is. Well, I'll fix it later on. Okay. It spawns there, but it doesn't do anything because we haven't told it to do anything yet. We don't have a destination or a base that we can use. So I'm in here again. We're going to make a public transform, and this one I'm going to call player target, again same one as last time, and I'm going to make a public transform, and that's going to call enemy base. So it's pretty much the same one as this one here. Okay, let's go back to our enemy spawner. So now we can actually add them. The player target, so I'm going to do player and enemy base, that one. So we can now actually access it by doing that. So now we can actually tell the nav mesh what to do, right? So we can now actually access the object, but first thing we're gonna change some stuff. So we can now actually name it, because right now it's just called enemy clone. It's a bit boring, so I'm gonna use daemon.name. Is we can call this enemy. And then I've added a tag to my objects. Let's check it here. I've added a tag called enemy. Just here, add tag, and then you can enemy. The reason is because we're going to store all the enemies in our tag enemy, because it's a bit more efficient, and then we can actually call them all at once. So I'm going to say here daemon.tag is enemy as well. So every enemy that spawns right now will have the tag called spawned enemy, which is perfect. It's exactly what we want actually. Okay, so we can now actually call this daemon name by its name, and then we can actually access this mesh and actually change this position to the one that we want to use, because right now it just says player target. So actually gonna change this one too. No, actually let's keep it like that. Let's keep it like that. And one thing I'm gonna do as well is I'm gonna add a counter. This one by default is 0. So every time we trigger it, I want the counter to add one up. So we instantiated one here, so then I'm gonna say counter plus plus. Because then we can actually change the name. We can actually say here plus counter. see it actually works. Should do just fine. So the names are always unique. So there's enemy 1, enemy 2, enemy 3, enemy 4. And they should spawn all around the level in a random fashion. And they do, as you can see. We might want to change the sound a little bit though, because right now it's really loud. Just might want to do this one to 50, for example. That applies here as reverb, if we can, if only can't, of course. I have to do it in here. I think. Oh, actually, this should work fine. Okay. So we gave it a name. For now, I'm just gonna delete this for a second, because first thing I want to do is actually access it and set the target to the player target. So we can do now is my target, for example. Let's do navmesh AI. Nav AI is game object. In this case, I'm just going to use find object. Enemy, then get component. Navmesh AI. We will probably change stuff around later on, but first let's get it to work. Then we can say player target is player target. This one. So the player target in our script actually gets changed to the player target that we added here. But it doesn't like that for some reason. 26. Oh, play script. That doesn't work. Should be player target. There you go. Player target is player target. It should make it disappear. So let's spawn one. If it doesn't crash, at least. We spawn an enemy. And then we get a nice error on line 25. Because it's called enemy clone, so they can't find the object in there. But it's fine for now. We're just gonna leave it like this, because we're gonna do the stuff. Most of the stuff will be actually done here in the updated player script. We'll be calling them there. So, but for now, okay, let's just get it to work, so I can show you guys what it actually does is enemy. Okay, let's go in there and let's spawn one. It should now actually change the player. I can find it. It doesn't. Let's see if that's all the attributes that it needs. Okay, the player target, it's there. But I don't think we actually told it to do something, because it's still in the chase player, so it's actually not called. But for now, I'm just gonna. I'll show you what happens. So chase player there. Just a simple test to see it actually works. And there it goes. It will slowly make its way to our player. See if it can come up the stairs. Should do. Yep. Cool. So this works. Let's get rid of this one again. Okay. In my start function here, in navmesh AI, I'm gonna put this, so it will always start chasing the player by default. Let's check it. Should work. Let's spawn multiple. Let's do multiple. This is actually correct, but that's fine for now. I just want to see it actually works. There it goes. It will make its way there. Okay. And the reason why we got errors because of the naming, so it doesn't actually know which one to get. So it just like, dude, I don't know what to do. Fuck you. I'm just gonna crash. That's pretty much what happened right now, which is fine. Because the only thing I want to do here is just spawn them, and not actually make them move. Because we're gonna do that in a different option here. So I'm gonna delete this part here. Actually, I might want to use the target though. Let's actually keep the target. Let's give them unique names. So they should just spawn, and that's it. Let's see if it actually works. actually do one more time to see what happens. Why we get errors. Spawn, spawn, spawn. Player target is empty, player target is empty, and enemy 1 is also empty. Okay. Don't know why though, but should be... Weird. Probably because of this one though, but it's fine. Okay. Let's delete this one. Actually, no, let's keep it. So, now what? We got them spawning, but they don't actually move yet. And they don't react to the light at this moment. They just are there. So this will work-ish, but we're gonna change it later on. So first thing I'm gonna do in here though is actually make them react to light for the moment. That's to actually change this one to that one. This should actually fix it, I think. Or not. Weird though that they don't actually react to the actual player. Hmm. 26. Makes sense, actually. We're gonna change this one to find object, game object with tag enemy. But we have to change a little bit of script then. This finds a game object, so let's call this game object temp demon. This game object will find enemy temp demon dot, and then we can access all these. Probably can actually find the object, or then we should get the component. Nav mesh AI. Oh. Temp demon dot so it's player target is, I just want to change this one to player actually. Yes, player. See if we get a bunch of errors right now. We do. Dot position. Nope. That's really weird. Fix some of them. Yep. Okay. Multiplayer? No, actually they don't. I'm gonna pause it for a second to see what the hell's going on here. Okay, so I figured it out. It wasn't actually that hard, but okay. Doesn't really matter. So let's move on. In here I'm gonna say the game is find demon.name. We can actually do it differently though. Let's do it differently. So nav mesh AI, nav AI is GameObject.find demon.name. Get component nav mesh AI, and then we can actually set the player target. Let's see if it actually spawns the player target properly. Should. See, now I actually have the player target. But they're still not moving though, because we're gonna do that in the player script. Because in here we can actually check to see if the flashlight is on. So I'm gonna show you a new type of for loop. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna check to see if my light is on or not. So flashlight on. So if it's false, I wanted to change the player. So in here I can now say for each, which means it will look for each object for each, and then I'm going to say game object temp enemy in game objects dot find objects with tag, so we can find every object that has a tag called enemy. then we can say here nav mesh AI. Nav AI is game object. No, it's actually temp enemy dot get component nav mesh AI, and then we can say nav AI dot chase player. So it then chases the player. So then we just call this function here. See if that works. Spawn them, and it should now actually chase the player. There we go. Let's add one more, 2 more, 3 more. See, now they all spawn and they all chase the player. This is in case the light is off. The light is off. So in here I also had to find. I also set the player or the enemy base to enemy base. I'm just gonna call this base target, so we know what we're doing. So in here I'm gonna say nav AI dot enemy base is base target. So both of them are set. So make sure they're both set here. So let's see if it actually works. Let's see, spawn enemy. Make sure that both items are set. In this case, this one isn't set still. Let's see why not. Did I actually load it in my base target? I didn't. This should be enemy base. There you go. They're now both lowered in. Perfect. Okay. Then in player script now, I can say else if flashlight is on, we can go for each. Again, game object, same one, temp enemy, and game object dot find game objects with tag. Note the S, so game objects, not game object. Get tag, and then same here, nav mesh AI. Nav AI is get component, nav mesh AI, and nav AI dot, I think it's return base. I think I called it like that. I did actually, return base. I think, yep, return base. So then it chases the, it should go back to start here. It's not ideal because then all of them would go there. But it's something we can of course later on fix by just adding multiple bases where they can go to. So let's see where they are. 4 of them. Turn the light, and there they go. They should all end up being there. Yep. Again, this is not ideal. Let's turn off the light again. And there they go. They all chase the player. So that's just something I'll just work on later on. How they can actually go through the door. That's nasty. Dicks. Let's just keep it at this for now. I'm just gonna fix a couple of things in the scripts, and then again next time we'll do the final episode probably of how to make a cave level. So I hope I'll see you guys next time.